Picture this. A high-powered lawyer storms into a meeting, ready to accuse a businessman of fraud. His tone is sharp, his accusations relentless. The target, a successful black entrepreneur who seems calm, almost amused, despite the heated confrontation. What the lawyer doesn't know is that this businessman isn't just any client. He's the new owner of the law firm the lawyer works for. What happens next flips the script entirely, and it's a lesson in assumptions, power dynamics, and poetic justice. How did a misunderstanding escalate into this dramatic showdown? And how will the lawyer react when he realizes the tables have turned? Stick around because this is one story you don't want to miss. The room fell silent as the businessman leaned back in his chair, his calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the lawyer's fiery accusations. Fraud, he repeated, raising an eyebrow. The lawyer, still unaware of the irony, doubled down, rattling off details of supposed discrepancies and citing legal jargon meant to intimidate. But the businessman wasn't fazed. In fact, he seemed more intrigued than anything else. What led to this tense encounter? Just weeks earlier, the businessman had finalized a quiet acquisition of the very law firm the lawyer worked for. The firm had been struggling financially, and the deal was kept under wraps to ensure a smooth transition. It was supposed to be a new chapter for everyone involved, until this moment. The lawyer, too focused on building his case, hadn't taken the time to learn about the firm's recent changes. And now he was unknowingly digging himself into a deeper hole. The businessman sat silently, letting the lawyer's accusations fill the room. Each word seemed to echo with misplaced confidence. It wasn't anger that crossed his mind, it was curiosity. How far would this lawyer go before realizing the truth? On the other side of the room, the lawyer saw this silence as a sign of guilt. He leaned forward, his voice growing sharper as he outlined every so-called fraudulent detail. But his claims were built on half-truths and assumptions, and the businessman knew it. The firm's outdated systems, which the lawyer relied on, had failed to account for recent updates made during the transition. If only he paid closer attention to the memos, or the new name on his paycheck. Meanwhile, the staff outside the office exchanged nervous glances. Word had already spread about the firm's new owner, but no one dared to interrupt. They knew the truth was about to reveal itself in the most dramatic way. The businessman finally leaned forward, clasping his hands together on the desk. His calm expression didn't waver, but there was a subtle shift in his tone, a quiet authority that cut through the lawyer's heated words. "Tell me," he said, his voice steady, "did you get all this information from the old records?" The question caught the lawyer off guard, but he recovered quickly, assuming it was a deflection. Of course, the lawyer shot back, almost smugly. And they paint a clear picture. He smirked as though he'd already won. But what he didn't realize was how outdated those records were. They reflected a firm under its previous ownership, a time riddled with inefficiencies and mismanagement. The businessman let the silence stretch, the tension thick in the air. The staff outside listened with bated breath, while the lawyer's confidence began to falter. Then with a measured tone, the businessman said, "Well, those records are no longer valid. You see, I've made a few changes since I bought this firm." The lawyer froze, his smirk fading as the businessman's words sank in. "You, what?" he stammered, his voice losing its edge for the first time. The confidence he'd worn so proudly just moments ago now seemed like a poorly fitted mask. The businessman, still calm, leaned back again and let the tension in the room do its work. "I'm the new owner of this firm," he said, letting the words hang in the air. "Which means you've just spent the last 20 minutes accusing your employer of fraud." The lawyer's face turned pale as the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. But before he could respond, the businessman continued. And what's even more interesting, he added, his tone sharpening, is that in reviewing the firm's practices, I found a number of questionable actions taken by one of our senior attorneys. Care to guess who? The lawyer's jaw tightened. He suddenly realized this wasn't just about his baseless accusations anymore. The tables had turned, and he was about to face consequences far greater than he could have imagined. The room felt heavier as the businessman reached into a folder on the desk, pulling out a stack of papers. "Here's what I found," he said, sliding the documents toward the lawyer. His tone remained steady, but his words carried undeniable weight. Unapproved billings, mishandled client funds, and a pattern of unethical practices, all tied back to you. The lawyer's hands trembled as he picked up the papers, his eyes darting over the evidence. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. The businessman didn't need to raise his voice. His composure made the gravity of the situation all the more intense. "I gave everyone here a fresh start when I took over," the businessman continued. "But it seems you've taken advantage of that trust." He paused, letting the weight of his statement sink in. "I'll be reporting this. Effective immediately, your position here is terminated." Just as the lawyer started to stammer an apology, the businessman stood, his calm demeanor unwavering. "And one more thing," he added, turning toward the door. "I suggest you find a good lawyer. You're going to need one." The door closed behind him, leaving the lawyer stunned and alone, his career and reputation unraveling in the silence. Outside, the staff exchanged knowing glances, the ripple effect of justice echoing through the firm. As the businessman walked out of the office, his steps were steady and purposeful. The staff, who had been quietly watching from a distance, exchanged whispers of admiration and relief. For months, the firm had been weighed down by the lawyer's arrogance and questionable practices. Now it felt like a new beginning. In the days that followed, the businessman's decision sent a clear message. This firm would stand for integrity and accountability. The staff, inspired by his leadership, began working with renewed energy and focus. Clients who had grown wary of the firm's old ways started to regain trust, drawn by the businessman's reputation for fairness and professionalism. As for the lawyer, his downfall became a cautionary tale, a reminder that arrogance and deception have a way of catching up with you. Meanwhile, the businessman proved that staying calm, focused, and true to your values is the ultimate power move.